Well, my name is Fielder Martin. I was born and raised in this area, born at Emory University Hospital, raised in Decatur. After graduating from Decatur High School, I stayed local, went back to Emory, did my undergraduate of 4 years, a political science major, and then became interested in the law practice and went on to Emory for another 3 years to get my law degree. So following that, I practiced initially in Decatur, kind of migrated out further and then to Atlanta. So if people ask me if I'm a native, I guess the answer is yes, because I've lived here and now have practiced law here my entire career. Having grown up here, I have certainly seen many changes in Atlanta, the growth being the main thing. There were less than, I think, 500,000 people back when I was growing up in Atlanta. And now, of course, we're 6.5 or 7 million. And with the population growth, of course, you've seen the construction practice grow because of the building that has gone on. Unbelievable over the last number of years. Well, Atlanta became popular as a convention center as the growth came along, and you saw the need for hotels, particularly in the development of the hospitality industry. In development generally, I think we'd have to contribute a lot of our growth to John Portman, who was so innovative in his ideas and had such magnificent plans for the future growth of the city. And basically you look at going from his Hyatt Hotel originally to the entire development in Peachtree Center, the other hotels, and certainly he's a person who has contributed greatly to the prosperity and growth in the city of Atlanta. What you notice most about Atlanta, it used to be pretty well level buildings. That we didn't have the skyscrapers of Chicago or New York or the West Coast, and now you just see the skyline going up tremendously with that growth. It's certainly been a big change in the skyline. Hotels in general, and I've been involved with a couple, are very difficult construction projects. As someone first told me, they are very much like jails in that they have to accommodate, they're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're not only places where you reside, you eat, you may even have shopping. And I never really thought about that, but hotel construction takes into a lot of other areas as well as just being a hotel. They can be difficult construction because of what is covered under one roof. Got a lot in one place. Well, part of it is gaining a knowledge of the parties involved. How do you get the parties working best together to look at the project as a whole and try to see what's going to benefit the project? And sometimes I think lawyers have got to take the time to look at that and not look at just what their particular client is doing on the project, whether you're representing the contractor or the owner, but try to get an understanding of everybody's goals and what can you do to help pull those goals together. Not always an easy job, but I think it's generally helps the project go rather than just taking a problem and dealing with it in isolation to what else is needed on the project. I guess I developed my interest in construction law accidentally when I started practice in '63, and around 1970s, early 70s, late 60s, I realized I had 3 construction-related clients, but I'd never thought about putting it together. I represented a mechanical contractor, represented an architect, and I represented a young but growing general contractor. And it just kind of came to me one day that there must be some connection or tie between these three clients, and because they're in different aspects of one operation, construction. And so I started thinking about it, going back to some construction seminars, construction law seminars. I actually took a couple of engineering courses on how to read a blueprint. Of course, you don't have to do that quite that way these days, but I learned a little from the technical, and then went back to many construction seminars and programs around the country in order to take hopefully gain the benefit of the knowledge of some of the issues from the perspective of people who had been involved for years. And I enjoyed it. Actually, my contractor client got so interested in what I was telling him, he actually attended a few of the construction seminars with me, and I actually went to one of those blueprint courses with him. So we shared our interests, and that really was my start in construction law. Probably the most interesting project I ever had, and the interesting client, was construction of a hotel known as the Phoenician Hotel in Phoenix, Arizona. I had been referred to the owner-developer of that hotel, who it was probably 80% or complete when I was asked to come on and assist with closing out the job, with a major difference between the owner-developer, my client, and the general contractor. And basically spent about a year, a little over a year, in Phoenix, established an office in their place out there, and had 2 or 3 of our associates working with me. And we were able to get a hold of what was really a total standoff between the owner and the contractor. And the contractor had threatened to terminate, and the owner had threatened to terminate the contractor. And we were able to get in time to work with everybody, help pull the project back together, and finally see a finished hotel. But again, its hotel construction was difficult. I've had the privilege of working with John Portman on a couple of their projects. The expansion of the merchandise mart was certainly one of them, and that was difficult because of the space and the lack of space, and what had to be added and tied and connected. That, of course, ended up to be a wonderful addition to the city, and a valuable addition. And again, there were issues on that case. The contractor and Mr. Portman had some disagreement, but we were able, after several runs at mediation, to bring the parties together on that, and the project finished very satisfactorily. In fact, the interesting memory I have of that is after about a 5th day of mediation, there was a break, and Mr. Portman's project manager came to me and asked me, he said, "Is it okay if the parties just go talk to each other without counsel and without the mediator?" And I cautioned, but said, "Yes, go ahead if y'all want to talk." And he came back with a big smile about an hour later, and I said, "Why is the big smile?" He said, "We've got this case settled." And I said, "How'd you do that?" He said, "We just promised to give the contractor another job on the next bid list." That settled the whole case. One of the most enjoyable parts of the practice of law for me was the opportunity I had to serve on the Board of Governors of the State Bar for 36 years. You had to run for that position every 2 years. I think after about the 5th time I ran, people gave up running against me, but it was great to be involved and understand the State Bar's operation, understand what's going on in the court systems, and really get a better feel for how the administration of justice is working, as well as trying to get an understanding of the views of lawyers from different parts of the state. And it just was a very enjoyable run I had at serving on the board. It was a lot of fun and very educational. The practice of construction law has certainly grown in many ways since I had that first desire to become involved back in the early 70s in several respects. One is, I think lawyers get involved in it were realizing the industry was different from many others in that it was not only a lot of risk and investment involved, but it was very fast moving. And when issues came up, there needed to be a way to address those issues, understanding them and get them addressed and resolved quickly, because building's not going to wait while you resolve the problem that the first subcontractor had coming on the job. And I think that was when I saw real focus coming on the alternative dispute resolution, primarily at that time focusing on arbitration. In fact, when I first started into the construction practice, you could not enforce a broad form arbitration clause signed in advance of the work. It was still not legal, and the courts had often held that arbitration was not enforceable because it was merely a mechanism to attempt to oust the courts of their inherent jurisdiction. And so they were not eager to enforce arbitration clauses. So some of the industry people that I was involved with and others wanted to push to get an arbitration bill passed in the legislature, which was successful in 1978. And since it was the construction industry people and the construction lawyers pushing for it, it was passed as the Construction Arbitration Code, only applicable to construction contracts or warranties on construction contracts, which of course made it very limited. And one of the first issues that I actually was peripherally involved in was a case where there was an arbitration clause in a contract involving demolition, and the other side raised the question of, well, demolition is tearing down a building. It's not construction, you're not building up, so the arbitration clause is not enforceable. So then that code, the 78 code, was amended later on, and I do forget the date, to make it a little broader as to what was under construction. And then 10 years later, I think people began to see the need for arbitration generally, not just confined to construction contracts, even though it was broader defined, and that included architectural contracts. So a broad form arbitration clause was ultimately passed in 1988, but I had the privilege of working with the State Bar Committee, beginning in 85 and 86 to really push to get this through the legislature and get the arbitration enforceable in all contracts, not just construction. The construction in Atlanta is growing tremendously. It's spreading out in the suburban areas. Well, there's a lot of apartments going on. It's amazing how they'll cluster an area with both some commercial and the living, where you have it all in one unit or one area. And so you're seeing I see construction growing in two arenas. One is in the suburban areas where you're getting these clusters of live and work all in the same place. At the same time, you're getting very large projects going in Buckhead or downtown Atlanta and other places. Not as much retail, but hotel and office buildings are coming back on, and then many of those are combined with a lot of commercial. So you've got two segments. You've got the segments out in the suburban areas with Atlanta spreading tremendously. And of course, that's quite a problem with the infrastructure, highways particularly, as well as the utilities. We're way behind on a lot of it, and I think construction is going to be confined to some extent by what the infrastructure can be done, or the improvements that can be made with the infrastructure to accommodate what the developers really want to do. Well, when construction law first became a term and a recognized area of practice, now I'm seeing the need and the actual development of specialties within construction law. Part of that is due to the changing technology in construction. Examples being the architect's use of BIM, and a lot of the programs today are so geared differently from the construction when I got into it, however many years ago that was. So you're having to get specialized areas of understanding. You're seeing new forms of contracts, and you're seeing technology advances. And to represent a client, you really need to have an understanding of how the technology is expanding in the industry, both from the design perspective and the construction. Construction law in the future could be a very interesting and challenging arena. It's going to be different. It'll be much more technical, probably more fast-moving in order to keep up with what's happening in the industry itself. So I think you're going to have areas, as I've indicated, of specialization within the construction law practice. Any new lawyer desiring to build or work in a construction practice needs to have a good mentor or two. And the advice I would give to any young lawyer with that interest is to find a good mentor who understands the industry, understands the practice, and can give them some guidance from the practical standpoint.